You know, I don't normally cover true crime stuff, and I didn't care too much for this story about Alex Murdaugh's final text message, the ongoing criminal trial, the family's history. But I'm sorry, I had to cover the story because it's just so it's interesting. It really is. Have you guys been following this? This is a prominent South Carolina family where previously there's this story that came out. You may remember the story where the son, Paul Murdaugh, was on a boat and a young woman died, and it was kind of a big deal. And now we have the story where apparently the father murdered his wife and son out by their kennel. And it's really interesting to hear the details. And so I'm gonna ask you some questions. I'm wondering what you think if this guy's guilty, because as I'm reading the story, it's basically the guy that they have dinner together. The wife, the son, the dad. Son's 22. Son was implicated in the death of this woman because he was boating under the influence, which was probably embarrassing for the family and caused a lot of pain and suffering for the family of the young woman who died. So apparently, as the story goes, according to the prosecution, they go out to the kennels at like 8:44 p.m. and then the dad shotgun blasts him and kills his wife and son. According to the dad, he's actually just sitting on the couch or like napping or something, gets in his truck, not realizing they may already be dead, and then goes to check on his mom, who's got Alzheimer's, 15-minute drive, and then come right back. Now they're saying he's got text messages and phone call records. But here's what's interesting. First, I hear this. I'm reading through this story, and they say that he tried calling his wife, and he texted his son saying like, "Hey, call me." Or I'll show you the text, and tried calling his wife several times. Prosecutors are saying that was him manufacturing an alibi. And so the first thing I think is like, I don't know, his pedometer, the foot tracking thing, stops tracking steps for like an hour and then starts tracking again. He says he comes back, calls 911. And I'm like, the fact that he was calling, I mean, look, it's reasonable doubt. You tell me that his phone wasn't tracking his footsteps. And I'm like, he said he was sleeping. What do you want me to do? Not believe the guy? But then they say that there's video showing, you can hear his voice. And I'm like, so he's clever. Now I'm thinking he did it. Then I started looking more into this because now I'm all of a sudden getting into this true crime story. And y'all probably know way more about this than I do. So comment, let me know what you think. Tell me about if you're following the story. But then I read the story about how this young man was driving a boat under the influence and ended up killing somebody, a young woman. And now I'm thinking like the prosecution said the motive of the father was that he was trying to generate sympathy because he's being indicted on a bunch of financial crimes. And now I'm just like, wait, what? Yeah, it's like a crazy, this should be a movie about like upscale, old money, white collar crime and murder. Someone called Ryan Johnson, Knives Out 3, ready to go. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, he killed his family because he's going to jail? That doesn't make sense. Why would he kill his family? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, dude, what if, this young guy, he's driving drunk on a boat and kills a young woman, and someone wanted revenge? I mean, that kind of makes more sense to me, to be honest. Why would a guy kill his own family? Give me a legitimate motive why a guy would kill his family. I mean, that's a tough one, right? And then I'm reading this, and I'm like, dude, what if somebody wanted revenge on Paul for having, driven this boat under the influence? So anyway, here's what I'll tell you. I'm reading the news all day, and I keep seeing this story, and I have no idea why everyone's talking about it or why the news is covering it so heavily. And then I just checked on it, and I was like, wow, this is salacious. This is true crime 10 out of 10. No wonder people want to talk about it. So I don't know. We'll take a break from your regularly scheduled Civil War and World War III talk and talk about this murder mystery, which just over the past like half hour, I'm just like reading. I'm like, let's talk about this. Let's speculate. Check it out. Let's get into the story. Let me first give you the timeline. This story is talking about the alibi that the prosecution claims he's crafting. It's live right now. Actually, they're in court. Here's the timeline of the killings, and I want you guys to comment. Let me know what you think as we go through this. Alex Murdaugh, 54, is accused of shooting his wife Maggie and son Paul at the family's hunting estate in Islandton, South Carolina on the night of June 7, 2021. Here are the key events. At 7:56, Paul sent a Snapchat video to his friends showing the 22-year-old riding around the estate with his father. At 8:15, Murdaugh's wife, Maggie, arrived home and the trio ate dinner together. Autopsies showed similar stomach contents in Maggie and Paul. Around 8:30, Paul's phone starts moving toward the kennels. 8:44, a second video taken by Paul at the kennel, soon to become a murder scene, allegedly proves that Maggie, Paul, and Alex were together. Now, I just want to point out, I'm like, I could talk about Taiwan right now. Why am I talking about this? I'm sorry, man. Once I realized his name, I'm like, Murdaugh. How do you pronounce that? Murdaugh? Alex Murdaugh and Murder Story? Come on, are you kidding me? Are we in a simulation? His name's Murdaugh. He's a Murdaugh. Come on. That's just crazy. Anyway, the prosecution say Paul's phone locked and went silent forever at 8:49, never to send another text. Between 9 and 9:30, Paul and Maggie were killed, according to the coroner. At 9:06, Murdaugh's car is fired up. The alleged killer said he went to go visit his mother, who was in the late stages of Alzheimer's, in Almeida, about 15 minutes. At 10:07, Murdaugh called 911, claiming he had arrived home to find his wife and son shot dead. So, why did it happen? Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone records revealed Tuesday how her husband of 28 years made a series of calls and texts to his wife in the frantic minutes after his death. Murdaugh called Maggie 3 times between 9:04 and 9:06, then twice more at 9:45 and 10:03. Prosecutors suggest the calls were an effort to manufacture an alibi. I mean, look, here's a potential story that I see. They show it in here. Let me see if his steps. Check it out. Between 8:05 and 8:09, there's 74 steps. No movement for about an hour. Then at 9:02 to 9:06, there's 283 steps. But like, what is that suggesting? Like, what is the prosecution saying? Dude is basically claiming that he was like napping or something. And let's read. Dove testified there were 5 missed calls from Alex on Maggie's phone. Paul's phone was found lying on top of his body. 5 minutes later, 8:59, Gibson messaged Paul, see if you can get a picture. It's talking about his dogs. The message went unanswered. Gibson tried calling Paul 5 times between 9:10 and 10:08 p.m. At 9:34, Gibson sent a message to Paul's mother, Maggie, saying, tell Paul to call me, but didn't respond. He sent a final follow-up message at 9:58, which simply said, yo. Now, here's a question I gotta ask. Why isn't it that this guy's text messages, why aren't they considered crafting an alibi? What if this dude set it up? I mean, here's the potential. From 8:05 to 8:09, there were 74 steps. Yeah, does it sound like the dude maybe was going to his couch, grabbing some chips and like sitting down and taking a nap or something, and then drops his phone and passes out? And then what's the suggestion? That he leaves his phone on the couch, then goes out, murders his family for dubious reasons, then comes back, picks up his phone, walks heavily 283 steps to his car, and then drives or doesn't drive and just makes a fake alibi or something. Look, I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly what happened. I just find this story is absolutely fascinating. One, because their name is murder, basically, whatever. The alleged killer said he tried calling Maggie before going to visit his mother, who was in the late stages of Alzheimer's. Call logs show Murdaugh tried ringing Maggie 3 times. He fired up his Chevy Suburban at 9:06 and texted Maggie that he would be right back and was going to check on his mother, who lives around 15 minutes away. He claims the last time he saw his wife and son was when they had supper together around 8:15. I mean, it all makes sense, doesn't it? Murdaugh called his wife twice more. We know that. Waters told jurors last week, it's up to you to decide whether he's trying to create an alibi. Murdaugh claims that when he arrived back at home, he found Maggie and Paul lying dead at the kennels. He called 911 at 10:07 p.m. However, the prosecution alleged that Murdaugh was with Maggie and Paul at the kennels. At 8:44, there's a video taken by Paul, which witnesses identify Paul's voice, Paul's voice, Maggie's voice, and Alex's voice. It has not yet been shown to the jury. I mean, that sounds like evidence to me, strong evidence. At the very least, it sounds like he's lying. Waters told jurors last week, the evidence will show he was there because of the murder scene. More than that, just over 3 minutes later, 8:49 p.m. in 1 second, Paul's phone locks forever. Never reads another text. But that doesn't prove to me that this is the guy who did it. It could have been an angry friend. Check this out. So I looked this up. Mallory Beach death inside the boat crash that killed a South Carolina teen. That's right. It was the Murdaugh family, and it was a fatal night where they got drunk, drove in a boat, the boat crashed, and the chick died. And now we have this absolutely insane story. So I'm like, why is everybody talking about this? Yo, because this is like, you got to write a movie about this. The Murdaugh family was a prominent American legal family in the Low Country region of South Carolina from 1920 to 2006. 3 members of the family consecutively served as solicitor. in charge of prosecuting all criminal cases in the state's 14th Circuit District. Since 2014, Richard Alex Murdaugh and other members of the Murdaugh family have been involved in investigations involving murders, corruption, and other alleged crimes, including insurance fraud, defrauding clients, theft of insurance payouts, drug-related charges. In 2019, amid allegations of special treatment, Alex's son, Paul Murdaugh, and other members of the Murdaugh family were implicated in a fatal boating accident. In June 2021, Alex Murdaugh's wife and son were murdered. Alex has been charged with their murders. Alex is also accused of embezzlement from his law firm, from which he resigned in September 2021. He has been incarcerated since October 2021 pending trials and has been disbarred by South Carolina. Okay, so, all right. A disgraced family of former renown is involved in a whole bunch of financial crimes, drunk boating accidents. Then they turn up dead. And the prosecution says the father killed his family because he wanted sympathy to, over the crimes he's committed or something like that. And I'm just like, you know what this really sounds like? It sounds like the whole place is probably just crooked and everybody's probably involved. How about this? Somebody knew this young woman. Look, have you guys watch 1883? You're watching it. I started watching it. And then you got the scene where, I don't even know the guy's name. The main character dude was played by Tim McGraw. Tells that other cowboy, like, don't get hands with my daughter. And then, his daughter falls in love with him. So he punches him in the face. I'm like, what would a father do for his daughter? So you got this crooked, well-connected family with tons of money involved in a whole bunch of crimes. How much more likely is it, or what's the possibility that you've got a deeper conspiracy that somebody went for a revenge killing on Paul and his family, and it wasn't the dad, and the dad was just lucky he wasn't there. Otherwise, he'd be dead. He's a guy who's embezzling money, accused of embezzling money in all these financial crimes. There's a lot of people who have a motive to hurt him and his family. Man, this is a crazy story to read. I've been seeing this story for the past, I don't know how long it's been going on for, and I just ignored it. And then I saw the headline. He tried to call his wife 5 times in 1 hour on the night she and her son were found dead. And I'm like, reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt, man. So I think what really stood out to me is that the prosecutors claim that it was sympathy. Let me pull this up. See if we can get it. Check this out. Prosecutors have said Murdaugh killed his wife and child to generate sympathy and distract from his financial crimes, an alleged motive that Murdaugh's lawyers have argued doesn't make sense. But he has adamantly insisted from the moment he found the bodies of his wife and youngest son shot multiple times that he was not the killer. Okay, I'm on a jury right now. I'm not following this as heavily as I followed Rittenhouse or these other cases. And there's probably a bunch of law YouTubers who are tracking this stuff way better than I am. So I totally get that I do not know anything about this. I'm just speaking to you and you guys can inform me because I'm reading this yo, what's going on with this thing, right? And I'm wondering, look, you tell to me as a juror, this man killed his son. And I'm sorry, no. There are people who kill their kids. There are people who kill their family members. That I understand. But there are tremendous hurdles to overcome in believing somebody would do that. Now, if you've got a story of there are a bunch of stories of women who murder their kids. There's guys who kill their families and stuff. There's stories about parents who will kill their kids because the wife was going to take the kid away or the husband was going to take the kids away, so they go nuts. I remember there was one story where this woman was concerned, I read this 20 years ago or something, that her kids wouldn't go to heaven because once they were too old, then they could, children are innocent or whatever. So she bludgeoned her children to death, saying well, now they'll go to heaven. And it's you're insane. You're crazy. What would convince me that a man in his 50s would murder his 22-year-old son? Because I've seen videos, man, you ever see a video of a man watching his own son die? There is a sound that comes out of a man watching his own son die that is blood-curdling. It's painful to hear. So you have a huge, huge leap to get me to believe this guy actually did it based on what I'm reading right now. I'm sure Ricada or one of these other law tubers are going to, be able to tell me exactly what I'm wrong about and all that stuff. I'm not saying I know everything. I'm just saying I start reading this story and outright I'm like, You got a family involved in a bunch of crimes. There's tons of reasons why people would want revenge against them. They killed a young, he's implicated in the death of a young woman with a boating accident, embezzlement, stealing money, defrauding clients. And you mean to tell me that this man killed his own son? For what reason? That to me is crazy. But ultimately, I'm just like, can we get a movie about this? Cops claim Murdaugh said, "I did him so bad." In his second interview with cops on June 10, 2021, 3 days after the killings, Murdaugh was asked about the traumatic picture he encountered on finding Maggie and Paul. Jurors on Monday were played the audio in which Murdaugh can be heard saying, "It's just so bad, I did him so bad." Prosecutor Waters paused the video to ask Special Agent Jeff Croft to clarify what Murdaugh said. Croft repeated, "It's just so bad, I did him so bad." But Murdaugh shook his head defiantly in court as he reacted to his interpretation of the audio and said, "I did not say that." However, his legal team did not object, and the recording continued to play. Detectives at the time did not seize on the alleged admission as Murdaugh continued to tell him of Paul. He was such a good boy, too. Look, man, saying I did him so bad, that doesn't mean you killed somebody. He could be crying because after dinner, he told his son he was a little jag-off. He's like, "You're amounting to nothing, you know that?" And that's why he's saying it. Like, he could be crying because the last thing he said to his son was, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're failing. It could be something as simple as that. We hear these stories, man, and they're often brutal, where somebody will say something to a loved one, they'll yell at their parent or their friend, and they'll be like, "You know what, screw you," and they storm off. And then the person gets in a car accident, and they're like, "I can't believe the last thing I ever said to this person I truly cared about and loved was something awful." Is that possible? Yo, I always err on the side of doubt. So if you're coming to me saying we should lock a guy up, I'm going to be like, you better prove to me, and you need some strong evidence that a man was willing to kill his son, and your motive argument is he wanted sympathy from other people. Okay, look, the guy's a criminal, allegedly, like the crime family, it sounded like. But even then, there's like, people might be selfish. People might want to steal things for their family, but you got a long way to go to convince me that a person murders their family for financial gain. Like a long way to go. And I get it. That people do, right? You might have somebody who kills a sibling because they want an inheritance, something like that I get. But a parent killing their child? Ooh, that's tough for me. Murdaugh tells cops about the boat accident. He told 911 about Paul's boat accident, claiming that his son had been threatened for months. That makes a lot of sense. The first cop to arrive said Murdaugh immediately started telling him about the February 2019 accident that left 19-year-old Mallory Beach dead. "I know that's what this is," he said. But why not? I mean, I don't know. Look, I get it. I don't know a lot about this case. I started reading this and I'm like, ooh, I want to talk about it. But why not? Why wouldn't it be a 19-year-old woman dies in a boating accident because this dude's drunk, and then someone who is family with that says this family gets away with crimes. They went easy on this kid. Well, I'm not. That makes more sense to me. Sorry. The prosecution could come out and be like, this guy wanted sympathy because he's a criminal. And I'm like, like he killed his son? That's hard for me to believe. Then you're like, it's also possible that somebody wanted revenge because the son killed a young woman. Okay, that makes sense. A dad, his daughter dies. The kid gets a lenient sentence or gets a light treatment, and now he's pissed and he wants retribution, and so he does this. That makes infinitely more sense to me than this dude went out and decided, I'm gonna kill my kid, whatever. And my wife. No visible blood on Murdaugh, but T-shirt reveals traces. Murdaugh had no visible blood on his white shirt, first responders have told the court. Police described seeing pools of blood under the bodies of Maggie and Paul. His defense attorney described to jurors how Paul's had literally exploded like a watermelon. Murdaugh earlier told 911 he had checked his wife and son's pulses, but when cops arrived, they saw no blood on him. That makes sense. I don't get it. Like, I don't know. What am I getting wrong? Are you going to walk up to somebody who's drenched in blood after being shot and then walk over and just start grabbing their whole body? Or are you going to carefully try and not touch blood? Or maybe even not try to tamper with things. But I do got to be honest, if his kid's head blew up, I don't know whose pulse he's checking. I'm not trying to be a dick or anything or be callous, but, seriously. The defense argued that Murdaugh was distraught after the killings and had just before been having a bonding experience with his son, as captured in a Snapchat video taken by Paul with his father. So then maybe I don't know why he said he did him dirty. Maybe he was thinking about not taking care of him or, I don't know. Police described seeing pools of blood. Murdaugh told he checked his pulses. There was no blood on him. Jurors heard Friday from Detective Laura Rutland, who said Murdaugh was clean from head to toe. Rutland added that it looks like Murdaugh had changed following the murders, noting that she found it odd the defendant was sweating, but his clothes were dry. That doesn't. Look, you're not convincing me. That doesn't convince me. A guy goes to visit his mom after dinner. So he puts on a clean shirt and jeans. He goes and visits her. He comes home. He walks out. He sees bodies, start panicking. He calls 911. Now he's sweating and his clothes are dry. They're not yet drenched. He just started sweating. That's not convincing to me. I mean, maybe if it piles up with a bunch of other things. Forensic expert Melinda Worley said Murdaugh's white t-shirt and khaki shorts reacted positive to a test for blood. However, she admitted the test can also be triggered by bleach and rust. And is it possible he got blood on him? Like when he was, okay, he's checking the bodies and you're like, but there was no visible blood on him, but there was blood. Okay, what's the argument they're making? This is a crazy story. Defense suggests 2 shooters killed Maggie and Paul. Harpootlian claimed on Monday that one reasonable explanation for the distance between the shots that killed Paul and Maggie was that there were 2 shooters. There are 2 people there. There are 2 guns there. One's a shotgun, one's an AR. Harpootlian suggested that Paul could have been shot by one perpetrator, while another who was acting as the lookout was surprised by Maggie. Worley then looked bemused, saying, "I wasn't there," before agreeing with Harpootlian that the theory could be one explanation, not the explanation. Footprints and tire tracks not preserved. Murdaugh's cell phone data. Murdaugh sobs. He tells detective his wife Maggie was a wonderful girl. Ammunition found at Murdaugh property matches that used to kill Maggie and Paul. Yeah, but come on. They say it was an AR-15 style rifle and 2 12-gauge shotguns. But what is it? The ammunition contained in the rifle, Cellular and Bello 300 Blackout, was the same type used to kill Maggie, Croft told jurors. The agent also described finding 12-gauge ammo boxes at the home, among them Federal and Winchester, the same brands as the 2 shells found near Paul's body. It's extremely common. The defense objected to the evidence, arguing that showing the series of weaponry to jurors was prejudicial to their client. There's no evidence linking these guns to the crime. Prosecutor Crichton Waters argued that they were showing how the search for weapons was conducted and how the weapons were tested thoroughly. Judge Clifton Newman sided with the state and overruled the objections. Gun residue on seatbelt of Murdaugh's car. In his opening, Waters said gunshot residue was found in the seatbelt of Murdaugh's car, as well as on a raincoat discovered in his mother's home. On a hunting property? With guns? I'm not surprised by any of this. They say, however, Murdaugh was in possession of a shotgun when police arrived, which he said he had grabbed from the house because he feared the killers were still out there. In earlier court filings, the defense argued the amount of residue found was inconsistent with the prosecution theory that Paul was shot at close range. The defense say the prosecution relies solely on circumstantial evidence. So look, I'm not gonna rant on this. I'm reading this and I'm getting fascinated by it. So I don't know, interesting story. I suppose if you're interested in more, I don't know how much I'll cover this, but it really did sound like a skull and bones, upscale, old money family embroiled in a conspiracy, revenge plot. Anyway, let me know what you think. I don't know. I don't even know if anybody wants to really hear a segment talking about this, but I just started reading it and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. So whatever, I'll leave it there. We'll get back to it. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. And I got to be honest, Taiwan's gearing up for an invasion. Joe Biden's house is getting raided. There is a lot of big news, but I just felt like doing something different. So I'll see y'all at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out.